quite a violent episode of NieR Automata, episode 6. Granted, again, they're all technically androids, but still, it was extremely violent. Lots of limbs and heads getting blasted and everything, but yeah, a lot of emphasis on, well, obviously the whole thing here is to get into Lily's backstory. A lot about the Resistance versus the Yora and what the Resistance think of the new android systems, and of course getting into, finally, who number 2 is, and seemingly imply that number 2 is still around. I'm assuming that's who that is, the very end, to be saying, you know, what if one of your comrades is still around, and then it cutting to a long white-haired android with a mole that looks like the mole that 2B has, obviously indicating that might be number 2. I didn't really know that their hair grows, so I guess that's a thing, because, again, number 2 had short hair just like 2B, and now she seemingly has long hair. But, yeah, really, really fantastic episode, despite the fact that it was extremely rough. But again, the interesting thing in this episode, I think, is really around that, I guess, mistrust that the Resistance would have to the Yora. Obviously, getting into Lily's past and her experience with the Yora, or at least one of the very first experience with the Yora, and that the Resistance came across these 4 Yora, and these Yora really wanted their help because they had this one database for these machine life forms, and they wanted to go take it out. But I think the more interesting thing in here is how much emphasis they put on the idea that these androids, the previous generation, these Resistance, they formed a family. They have a family unit, and their whole focus that they've kind of turned into is self-preservation. Again, this is going back to that whole thing about the machine life forms and how the machine life forms have been slowly evolving. It, again, indicates this idea that they're all kind of cut from the same technology, that these androids are similar to the machine life forms, and the idea that over time, them being here, they form bonds, and they're acting human. They're literally they're acting like humans, and they're focused on self-preservation rather than the ultimate goal of everything else. And so when the Yora come across them, they don't care to help the Yora. They don't want to help them. They want self-preservation. And it isn't until number 2 kind of speaks up emotionally and tells them that there's still hope, that there is this goal that we want to take down, and we need your help. And it ultimately leads to their commander saying, okay, let's do it. We can't just focus solely on self-preservation. We have to fight eventually. And that leads them into, yes, what some would kind of dictate as being an error. They made a mistake in going with them because they end up being a casualty to this whole thing. The commander and everybody is not giving them the backup they need. Now, granted, you can assume the commander probably wants to, but she can't. Which always kind of leads to that whole big question mark is, why does it seem like they never have backup? Like, this is going to be like a recurring theme throughout this entire series, is that they have these missions, they go to the missions, they don't have the resources to do the mission, and the command doesn't care. The command just lets them kind of die. Now, granted, do they have the resources to provide them? Is it, like they state, just a suicide mission? And there was never an intention for them to survive it, just to get the goal and take down the goal and not worry about getting out. It's also like really mean in the idea that despite the fact that they finally gain some sort of truce here and the Resistance accept to help the Yora, still, even then, they're not giving them the information they need. It's all military secrets. I can't give you the information of how we found the server. It's just dirty. But I like the fact that over time, them spending time together, despite the fact that they keep kind of bashing heads, the Yora and these Resistance keep bashing heads. Ultimately, when it comes to the point where Lily herself gets infected, it's the Yora that help her. Well, now, granted, a lot of that has to do with number 2. She wanted to help Lily, and everybody else kind of jumped in to help her. But the end result there was that the Yora stepped forward to save her. The rest of them assume they can't help him. Now, the interesting thing that came from this whole infection thing that I'm drawing a little bit of a theory, and I'm not asking for the answer here, but one of the interesting thing that's always been with the Yora is that they always have to keep this headband on to cover their eyes. They're always blinded, or they always keep their eyes hidden. Not that they can't see, it's just that you can't see their eyes. But it seems to imply that when they take off their headband or their eye cover, it seems like it's allowing them to function more, like it's like a Chinubio limit releaser or something like that, because they take off the headband and they go to do something. But I was kind of curious as to what is the emphasis there? Is it to limit them or is it to protect them? I sort of got the indication by one of them kind of doing that whole hacking process. They take off the headband, they're working on it, and then suddenly they say, go ahead. And their eyes are red, like they've been infected. So my curiosity here is if this is somehow related to guarding them from being infected, or is it just a hacking process that gets the virus into them? It sort of implied this idea that there's a possibility that the only reason that this one, I think it was number 21 or something, the only reason they were actually infected was Lily. Lily blamed herself, I think, for the fact that she was infected. But again, I'm kind of curious if it has some sort of relation to the blindfold. I do appreciate the kind of running theme that they had throughout this episode in the idea of what is dreams and what is memories. And the idea that Lily early on in the episode is having dreams, but she knows those dreams are just her memories. And there's a lot of emphasis on the idea that she's trying to find out from 2B, can we dream? No, you can't dream. Same thing that happens towards the later part. Can we dream? No, you can't dream. It's almost like the memories of the suffering that she's gone through is what she's trying to figure out if it's a dream or a memory in the earlier segments. But when we're looking in the past stuff, it's really about a dream in regards to possibly an escaping from reality. This idea that she wishes it's a dream when it's in the past, but in the future, she wished it to be a dream so that she can forget it. If that makes sense. I know that might not make sense, but it makes sense in my head. Escapism versus trying to get over something. But no, I'll be really curious to see if we actually do get number 2 coming back. Because, my gosh, seeing a, like, hyper Genki version of 2B was just really weird. It was supposed to be her own model. That's why she looks the same. She says, like, all number 2s look the same. And so that's why this one looked the same as 2B. But it's just kind of funny just seeing this overly Genki, cheerful, goofy, almost kind of immature version of 2B kind of skipping around and talking all happily and stuff like that. So I'll be curious to see if possibly again, if it is number 2 that you see at the very end, if she still has that mentality or if what seems like her endless fighting that she's been doing, because it shows her like in this area that's just covered in machine life forms, if possibly that endless battle she's gone through has kind of changed her. But yes, solid episode. Really enjoyed it. A lot of great scenes, a lot of funny moments too. I like the earlier segments of the episode having kind of this back and forth between 9S and 2B and Lily, and you're wanting to know more information about it. How do I respond to that? Do however you want. Yes, I'm curious. And he's like, you're totally thinking you're taking too long, 9s. And he's like, no, I'm not thinking that. I'm thinking you're taking too long, 9S. They're going to keep drugging up that joke about the 9s versus 9S. I also really like the struggle that Lily herself has and the idea that she wasn't designed for combat, which I'm not sure if they implied what she is, if she's a scout or if she's some sort of maintenance type of android. But I like that struggle that she has and the idea that she's never really been equipped to be in combat, so she's always been a burden upon others. So it kind of is that aspect of not so much somebody being inexperienced, but the idea that they're designed to be a certain way, and that functionality they're designed to do would create some sort of struggle that she herself is kind of facing. But anyhow, that's my thoughts on episode 6 of NieR Automata. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as always. If you did, make sure to hit that like button down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the episode. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list if it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, we have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks button down below. Greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel, and y'all take care.